You're too small to handle this mission.
Size doesn't matter. I can do it.
We'll see about that.
3 minutes later, she'd be the only one standing between 47 hostages and certain death, with a bullet wound in her shoulder and her spotter bleeding out beside her. The terrorists never saw her coming. By the time they realized their mistake, 90 seconds had passed, and she'd taken 14 impossible shots in conditions that would make veteran snipers quit. What they didn't know was that the weak female soldier they mocked had a classified kill record that made Delta Force operatives look like amateurs. Her codename was Ghost, and she was about to show them why. The morning briefing at Forward Operating Base Titan in northern Syria felt like every other pre-mission meeting Captain Elena Vasquez had endured in her 8 years with Army Special Operations. Except this time, the disrespect wasn't hidden behind polite professionalism. It was right there in Sergeant First Class Marcus Davis's smirk as he looked at her rifle. "Ma'am, with respect," Davis said, though his tone carried none. "The Barrett MA-201 weighs 30 pounds fully loaded. Are you sure you wouldn't be more comfortable with something lighter? Maybe a spotter scope position." The 12 operators in the room shifted uncomfortably. They all knew Elena's reputation, or at least the unclassified parts of it. But Davis was new to the task force, transferred in from conventional infantry, where women in combat roles were still novelties rather than teammates. Elena stood 5'4" in her combat boots. At 118 pounds, she looked like someone's little sister. Not a trained killer with 89 confirmed eliminations across 4 combat theaters. The Barrett rifle that Davis questioned was her preferred weapon, customized to her specifications with a shorter stock and modified trigger pull. "Sergeant Davis," she replied evenly. "I've been carrying that rifle through mountains in Afghanistan since you were doing push-ups at basic training. I'll manage." Captain Robert Chun, the task force commander, cleared his throat and projected the mission brief on the screen. The satellite imagery showed a compound in the Jabal al-Akrid Mountains, 3 buildings arranged in a horseshoe pattern around a courtyard. "Intelligence confirms 47 hostages inside the main structure," Chun explained. "International aid workers, journalists, and local civilians. The terrorist cell holding them is led by Khalidom, a bomb maker responsible for at least 200 deaths across the region. They're demanding ransom and threatening to execute prisoners if we don't comply." "What's the timeline?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Park, the team's communications specialist. 18 hours before the first execution," Chun replied. "But weather conditions are deteriorating. We have a 6-hour window for insertion. Then the mountain passes close due to storms. After that, hostages start dying and we lose our window completely." Elena studied the compound layout, her mind automatically calculating angles, distances, wind factors. The main building had limited entry points, all likely booby. The courtyard offered no cover for a ground assault. This was a precision operation, not a breach, and clear. "Sniper overwatch," she said quietly. "There's a ridgeline, 800 meters northeast. Clear line of sight to all 3 buildings. And the courtyard, put me there with good intel on target locations, and I can neutralize threats without risking the hostages." Davis laughed outright. 800 meters in mountain winds with potential hostage crossfire. "Ma'am, that's a Hail Mary shot for an Olympic shooter. In combat conditions, with lives on the line, we need reliability, not heroics." "I didn't ask your opinion, Sergeant," Elena said, her voice dropping to a temperature that made the room noticeably colder. "I stated a tactical option." Chun intervened before the tension escalated. "Captain Vasquez will take overwatch position as suggested. Lieutenant Park and her surveillance team will provide real-time intelligence. Alpha team will stage foreground insertion if the sniper option fails. Davis, you're on perimeter security." The dismissal in that assignment was clear. Davos's face flushed red, but he said nothing. After the briefing, Elena headed to the armory to prep her gear. She found a spotter, Corporal James Rivera, laying out ammunition and checking their rangefinders. "Davis doesn't know who you are, does he?" Rivera asked, without looking up. "He knows my rank and that I'm a woman," Elena replied, field stripping her Barrett with practiced efficiency. "That's all he needs to know to form his opinion." Rivera paused his work and met her eyes. The man had been her spotter for 2 years, through operations in 3 countries. He'd watched her make shots that defied physics and probability, had carried her off objectives when she'd taken shrapnel, saving his life in Kandahar. He's going to learn the hard way, Rivera said simply. Elena didn't respond. She'd stopped trying to prove herself to men like Davis years ago. Her record spoke for itself, even if most of it was classified above his clearance level. The nickname Ghost hadn't come from nowhere. In some circles, among people who knew what happened in the dark places where Special Operations Forces worked, her name carried weight. But here, in this briefing room, to this new sergeant, she was just a small woman with an oversized rifle and delusions of adequacy. She finished reassembling her weapon and began loading magazines. Match grade .50 BMG ammunition, each round hand-selected for consistency. At 800 meters, even a minor variation in bullet weight could mean the difference between a clean hit and a dead hostage. "Gear check in 3 hours," she told Rivera. "I want to be on that ridgeline with 2 hours of daylight to establish positions and confirm ranges." "Copy that," Ghost Rivera replied, using the calcine that Davis and the others weren't cleared to know. Let them underestimate her. She'd been underestimated her entire career. From the Marine recruiter who'd tried to steer her toward administration, to the Ranger school instructors who'd assumed she'd quit by day 3, to the Special Operations Selection cadre who'd given her double the physical standards just to watch her fail. She'd proven them all wrong. Quietly, efficiently, with precision that became legendary among those who mattered. Tomorrow, when 47 lives hung in the balance, Davis would learn what the others had learned. Size didn't determine capability. Gender didn't predict performance. And the deadliest weapon in any arsenal was the one your enemy never saw coming. The helicopter insertion went smoothly, despite the deteriorating weather. By nightfall, Elena and Rivera were nestled into a hide site on the ridge line overlooking the target compound. The position was exactly as she'd hoped, elevated, concealed, with clear sight. Through her high-powered scope, Elena watched the compound come alive with activity as darkness fell. Squads with AK-47s patrolled the perimeter. Lights flickered in the main building where the hostages were held. She counted 8 visible hostiles, but intelligence suggested at least 20 in total. Wind is variable. 3 to 7 miles per hour from the northwest, Rivera reported, reading data from their portable weather station. Temperature dropping, humidity rising, storm front moving in faster than predicted. Elena adjusted her scope's parallax and began ranging key points. The compound's main entrance, 847 meters. The guard tower on the east corner, 823 meters. The courtyard center, 811 meters. She logged each measurement, calculating bullet drop and wind drift for every potential engagement point. Her radio crackled. "Overwatch. This is command. Surveillance feed is up. We have thermal imaging on the main building." Lieutenant Park's voice was calm, professional. "Confirmed 43 hostages in the central room, ground floor. 4 more isolated in the basement level. 22 hostiles identified. 12 on active patrol. 10 inside with the prisoners." Elena studied the thermal overlay on her tablet, comparing it to what she could see through her scope. The hostiles inside were positioned around the hostages, using them as human shields. A ground assault would be a bloodbath. "Command. Overwatch." Elena transmitted. "Confirm. Are the hostiles wearing body armor?" "Negative," Park replied. "Light tactical gear only. But they're interspersed with civilians. Shot angles are extremely tight." Through her earpiece, Elena heard Davis's voice from the staging area. "This is impossible. Even if she takes out the exterior guards, the interior targets are suicide shots. We need to breach." "Stand by, Alpha Team," Chun ordered. "Overwatch, what's your assessment?" Elena took a slow breath, centering herself. She'd made harder shots under worse conditions. The key was sequence and timing. Take out the exterior guards first, quietly, before they could raise an alarm. Then the interior targets, fast enough that they couldn't execute hostages in retaliation. "I can do this," she said quietly, "but I need complete radio silence once I start. Any distraction, any noise in my ear, and someone dies. I need 4 minutes from first shot to last. Can ground team be ready to breach immediately after I'm done?" There was a pause. Then Chun's voice affirmed. "Alpha Team will breach on your signal. You have authorization to engage at your discretion. Godspeed." Ghost. The use of a calcine told her everything. Chun knew her record. He was trusting her with 47 lives. Rivera settled in beside her with the spotting scope. "Wind's picking up," he warned. "We're looking at 8 to 10 mph gusts now." Elena's finger traced the scar on her left forearm, a habit she'd developed without realizing it. The scar was a reminder of Afghanistan, of the operation where she'd earned her ghost calcine by eliminating an entire insurgent patrol in 12 shots without being detected. She'd been wounded during extraction, but she'd gotten everyone out. "First target," Rivera called out. "Guard tower, east corner, range 823, wind right to left. A 9 mph target is stationary." Elena settled behind her rifle, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon, the slight chill of the stock against her cheek. Her breathing slowed, heart rate dropping as years of training took over. She wasn't thinking anymore. She was simply becoming the instrument of precision that her instructors had forged through thousands of hours of practice. The crosshairs settled on the guard's chest. She calculated the holdover for bullet drop, adjusted for wind drift. Exhaled halfway and held. The Barrett roared, and 800 meters away, the guard collapsed without a sound that could carry to his comrades. "Hit," Rivera confirmed. "Targ down." Elena was already transitioning to her next target before the first had finished falling. The second guard went down, then the third. Elena moved through her sequence with mechanical precision, each shot perfectly calculated, each target falling before they understood they were under attack. 5 guards eliminated in 30 seconds. That's when everything went wrong. "Overwatch, be advised." Park's voice crackled urgently. "Thermal shows movement in the basement. They're moving a hostage toward the stairs. Possible execution imminent." Elena's heart rate spiked, but her hands remained steady. She shifted her aim toward the main building's entrance, waiting for a shot opportunity. Then the explosion hit. The IED must have been positioned on the ridgeline's lower approach, probably as a counter-sniper defense. Elena never saw it detonate, but she felt the shockwave slam into their position. Rocks and debris erupted around them. Something hot punched through her left shoulder, spinning her partially away from her rifle. Rivera was thrown backward, clutching his leg where shrapnel had torn through his thigh. "I'm hit! I'm hit!" Elena's vision swam with pain, but her training overrode everything else. She forced herself back behind the rifle, ignoring the blood soaking through her uniform. The compound was now alert, guards rushing toward the main building, preparing for the execution they'd threatened. Through her scope, she saw a hostage being dragged into the courtyard, a young woman, journalist maybe, hands bound, a guard with a pistol to her head. "Ghost, this is command." Chun's voice was tight. "We're sending medevac to your position. Abort, mission, and extract." "Negative," Elena gasped through gritted teeth. The pain in her shoulder was like a white-hot poker, but she could still see through her scope, still control her trigger. "Hostage in the courtyard. I have a shot, Captain Vasquez. You're wounded. We're breaching now. You breach now, and they execute everyone," Elena snapped. "I have this. Trust me." She didn't wait for permission. The guard with the pistol was shouting something, probably demands or threats for the camera one of the terrorists was operating. The journalist was crying, terror written across her face. Range 811 meters. Wind gusting 212 mph. Target moving erratically. Shot angle 75% occluded by hostage's body. Elena exhaled, found the microsecond of stillness between heartbeats, and fired. The 50 caliber round crossed the distance in under 2 seconds. It struck the terrorist's head at an angle that avoided the hostage entirely, dropping him instantly. The journalist screamed and ran. "Hit," Elena whispered, already transitioning to her next target. More terrorists poured into the courtyard, confused, angry, looking for the shooter. They didn't look up at the ridgeline, 800 meters away. They looked at the surrounding buildings, at Achate, everywhere except where death was coming from. Elena's shoulder was on fire, blood loss making her vision tunnel. But she'd entered a state beyond pain. This was what her father, a Marine Scout sniper, had called the zone, where time slowed. where calculations happened faster than conscious thought, where your body became a perfect instrument of controlled violence. Second hostile in the courtyard. Shot down. Third hostile emerging from the building. Shot down. 2 more running toward the hostages inside. She shifted her aim through the main building's window, an almost impossible shot through glass at this range, accounting for refraction and deflection. Shot. The first terrorist fell. Shot the second stumbled, wounded, and a hostage, a brave man, despite his bound hands, kicked him to the ground. Rivera was trying to apply a tourniquet to his own leg, blood everywhere, but his voice came through weak but determined. Basement. They're moving them. Basement targets. Elena shifted her scope downward, trying to see into the lower level through the small windows. Thermal imaging showed 4 hostages and 3 terrorists. The angle was impossible. Shots blocked by concrete and furniture. Command. I need Alpha Team to create a distraction. Elena transmitted. Basement targets are shielded. I need them exposed. Copy that. Chun replied. Alpha Team, suppress fire on the north wall in 30 seconds. Overwatch, we're giving you a window. Elena held a position, fighting against the tremors, starting in her wounded shoulder. Blood loss was affecting her now, hands beginning to shake. She had maybe 60 seconds before she lost consciousness. Gunfire erupted from Alpha Team's position. The terrorists in the basement responded instinctively, moving toward the perceived threat, clustering near the windows to return fire. Now, Rivera gasped. They're exposed. 3 terrorists, 3 windows, 3 shots. Elena took the first shot. Through the narrow basement window, the round found its target. 1 down. The second terrorist ducked, but not fast enough. She led his movement, fired where he would be, not where he was. The fundamentals her father had drilled into her 1,000 times. Too Dune. The third terrorist realized what was happening, started to aim his weapon at the hostages, choosing to murder them if he was going to die. Elena's vision was dimming, the world narrowing to just her scope's view, her crosshairs, the single most important shot of her life. The terrorist was partially behind a concrete support. Only his head and weapon were visible. The shot required threading a bullet through an 8-inch gap at 800 meters, with wind gusts and failing light and blood loss and every possible complication. She took the shot. The 50 BMG round traveled through the narrow opening and struck the terrorist in the temple, killing him before his finger could fully depress the trigger. His weapon clattered harmlessly to the floor. Elena collapsed beside her rifle, the last of her strength gone. Old basement targets. Eliminated, she whispered into her radio. Alpha Team, clear. To breach. Then darkness took her. Elena woke to the rhythmic thunder of helicopter rotors and the antiseptic smell of a field hospital. Pain radiated from her shoulder, but it was manageable, controlled by whatever medications they'd pumped into her system. Welcome back, Ghost. Rivera's voice came from her left. He was in the bed next to hers, his leg elevated and wrapped in heavy bandages. You've been out for 6 hours. The hostages? Elena asked immediately, her throat raw. All 47 extracted safely, a new voice answered. Captain Chun entered her field of vision, standing at the foot of her bed. Thanks to you. 14 terrorists eliminated in 90 seconds of shooting that my after-action reviewers are calling statistically impossible. You threaded shots through windows, around hostages, in conditions that should have made accurate fire impossible. Just did my job, Elena murmured. The standard operator response. Chun smiled slightly. The hostages don't think it was just a job. The journalist you saved first, Amanda Patterson from the New York Times. She's writing a story about her rescue. The aid workers are calling you an angel, and the intelligence we recovered from that compound is leading to operations across 3 countries, Sergeant Davis, Elena asked. Not because she cared about his opinion, but because she was curious how he'd processed what happened. Chun's expression hardened. Sergeant Davis has been reassigned. After witnessing your performance, he submitted a formal apology and requested transfer out of special operations. Apparently, Watching you save 47 lives while wounded made him reconsider his assumptions about who belongs in combat. He doesn't need to leave, Elena protested. He was ignorant, not malicious. That's generous of you, Chun replied. But in our line of work, ignorance about your teammates' capabilities gets people killed. He recognized that. The reassignment was his choice. A doctor entered, checked Elena's vitals, and declared that she'd need 6 weeks of rehabilitation before returning to duty. The bullet had passed through her shoulder without hitting major vessels, but the muscle damage would require physical therapy. As the doctor left, Rivera spoke up. They're recommending you for the Medal of Honor. Elena's eyes widened. That's classified operations. They can't. They're sanitizing the after-action report, Chun interrupted, removing sensitive details, but preserving the core facts. 1 soldier wounded, saving 47 civilian hostages through exceptional marksmanship under combat conditions. The recommendation is going forward, and between you and me, it's going to be approved. Elena didn't know what to say. In 8 years of special operations, through dozens of classified missions, she'd never sought recognition. The work itself had been enough, knowing that her skills kept people alive, that her precision prevented collateral damage, that her presence on a team made impossible missions merely difficult. There's something else, Chun continued. The hostages asked to meet you. I told them you needed rest, but... He gestured toward the hospital tent's entrance, where a group of people waited nervously. They've been here since they heard you were awake. Elena nodded consent, and the group filed in: journalists, aid workers, translators, ordinary people who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time and thought they'd die there. Amanda Patterson, the journalist Elena had saved first, stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. I watched you, Amanda said quietly, through the window, after you shot the man holding me. I saw the muzzle flash from the ridgeline. I saw you take shot after shot, and each time one of our captors fell. You were so far away, just a shadow on the mountain, but you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Death coming for our captors, life coming for us. An aid worker, a middle-aged doctor named James Chun, no relation to the captain, spoke next. They told us about your shoulder, that you'd been hit by shrapnel, but kept shooting. How is that even possible? Elena met his eyes, because stopping wasn't an option. If I stop, you die, so I don't stop. Ever. The group stayed for 20 minutes, each person sharing their gratitude, their disbelief, their recognition that this small woman they might have passed on the street without a second glance had been the difference between life and death. After they left, Elena lay back against her pillow, exhausted but satisfied. Rivera was quiet for a long moment, then spoke. You know what the guys are saying? He asked. What? That anyone who doubts what women can do in combat should have been on that ridgeline, should have watched you work, wounded, bleeding, and still hitting targets in conditions that would make most male snipers pack up and cry. Elena smiled slightly. That's not about gender. That's about training, experience, and refusing to quit. Any properly trained operator could have done what I did. No, Rivera said firmly. Not anyone. You're special, Ghost. And not because you're a woman. Because you're you. Because something in your wiring makes quitting impossible. Because when everyone else sees obstacles, you see solutions. Because 47 people are alive today who wouldn't be without you. Elena didn't respond. She closed her eyes and saw the faces of the hostages, heard their voices thanking her. She thought about Sergeant Davis, learning the hard way that capability had nothing to do with chromosome. She thought about every doubter she'd ever faced, every person who'd assumed her size or gender meant she couldn't perform. And she thought about the next mission, the next impossible shot, the next time someone else's life would depend on her refusing to accept limitations that others tried to impose. Her shoulder throbbed, a reminder that she was human, vulnerable, capable of being hurt. But pain was temporary. The lives she'd saved were permanent. 6 months later, Elena stood before a room full of officer candidates at Fort Benning Sniper School. Her shoulder had healed, though it ached in cold weather. The Medal of Honor hung in a case at her parents' house, rarely discussed, but always present. My name is Captain Elena Vasquez, she told the class. Some of you may have heard of the operation in Syria. Some of you probably have opinions about whether I deserved the recognition I received. I don't care about your opinions. The room was silent, a mix of male and female candidates, all wondering what came next. What I care about is whether you understand what it takes to make the shots that save lives, Elena continued. It's not about strength. The rifle carries the load, not your muscles. It's not about size. The bullet doesn't care how tall you are. It's about precision, discipline, and the absolute refusal to accept failure when lives are on the line. She walked along the front of the classroom, making eye contact with each student. Some of you will wash out of this program, she said bluntly. Some of you lack the mental discipline. Some lack the physical stamina. Some just lack the commitment. But none of you will fail because of your gender, race, or appearance. You'll fail because you're not good enough. And that's the standard that matters. A male candidate in the back raised his hand. Ma'am, with respect, do you think you would have received the Medal of Honor if you were a man? Or did they give it to you because of optics? Elena smiled coldly. Do you think those 47 hostages cared what gender I was? Do you think the bullet I put between a terrorist SIs at 800 meters in high wind, while wounded, cared about optics? Do you think the shots I made through basement windows that physics professors say, should you have been possible, cared about my chromosomes? The candidate looked down, chastened. I received the Medal of Honor because I performed actions above and beyond the call of duty, Elena stated. Same as every other recipient in history. My gender is mentioned in the citation not because it made me special, but because small-minded people need to be reminded that heroes come in all forms. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation footage from her helmet camera during the Syria operation. The scope view of target after target falling with mechanical precision. This is what excellence looks like, she said. No excuses, no special treatment, no lowered standards. Who's to work? Now, let's see if any of you can match it. For the next 8 weeks, Elena taught those candidates everything she knew. She pushed them harder than any instructor before her, demanded more, accepted less. And when the course ended, 12 candidates earned their sniper qualifications. 7 men and 5 women all held to exactly the same standard. On graduation day, Sergeant Marcus Davis appeared at the ceremony. He'd been working as a recruiter in Texas, but he'd requested permission to attend. After the ceremony, he approached Elena with obvious discomfort. Ma'am, he said, I owe you an apology. A real one, not the formal statement I submitted months ago. Elena waited. I judged you based on what I could see instead of what you could do, Davis continued. I let my prejudices override my professionalism. Watching the classified footage of that operation, seeing what you did under impossible conditions, each chunk it made me realize how many talented people I've probably dismissed over the years because they didn't fit my narrow definition of what a warrior should look like. What do you want from me, Sergeant? Elena asked. Not unkindly. Permission to learn, Davis replied. I've applied to return to special operations. If I'm accepted, I want to serve under officers who will challenge my assumptions and make me better. Officers like you? Elena studied him for a long moment, then extended her hand. If you make it back to the task force, I'll be glad to have you. But you'll work twice as hard to prove you've changed. Prejudice is a luxury we can't afford in combat. Davis shook her hand firmly. Yes, ma'am, I understand. As he walked away, Rivera joined Elena, now fully recovered from his leg injury and back on active duty. Think he'll make it? Rivera asked. Maybe, Elena replied. People can change if they want to badly enough. The question is whether he wants it or just feels guilty. They stood together watching the new sniper graduates celebrate with their families. Elena thought about her journey from the little girl whose Marine father had taught her to shoot, to the operator who'd proven time and again that excellence had no gender. Her radio crackled. Ghost, this is command. We have a situation developing in East Africa. Humanitarian crises, potential hostage scenario. We're assembling a task force. Are you available? Elena looked at Rivera, who nodded. They were always available. This is Ghost, she transmitted. Send the brief. We're ready. And with that, Captain Elena Vasquez, the woman they'd called too small, too female, walked toward the helicopter that would carry her to the next impossible mission. the one where lives would hang in the balance and someone would need to take the shots that others couldn't make. She'd earned her calcine. Ghost. The deadly shadow that enemies never saw coming. The precision instrument that turned impossible into inevitable, and she was just getting started. If you believe capability matters more than appearance, if you believe heroes come in all forms, drop a comment saying, "Never judge." Because the most dangerous assumptions are the ones we make about who can save our lives.